All right, and we have lost our attendees.
What? No, they're
No, there they
coming.
are. Okay, they're just
They're,
entering the room. Okay, so we are recording, we're live, and I'll let them come in for a moment. Hello, everyone. My name is Lane Booker, and I am the Secretary for CSINext and President-elect. I'll be President-elect next fiscal year in July. Joining me are Donovan Olliff, AIA Esquire, who is a Senior Vice President and General Counsel at HOK. And we're also joined by Jennifer Taylor, who's a Senior Strategic Delivery Manager at HDR. Donovan and Jennifer serve with me on the AIA Contract Documents Committee. And unfortunately, Josh Flowers had a conflict and isn't going to be able to make it. But they just came from the AIA conference on architecture last week and are going to share with us the information they shared there on AIA's new progressive design build documents. So I'm going to turn the mic over to them, and thank you again, and we'll see you at the end. And if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A pane, and I will try to monitor those and ask the questions for you. Thank you.
Good. Well, sounds good. Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's good to meet with you guys this afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about AIA's new progressive design build documents. We'll be presenting a brief overview of the documents that were published in 2024. We're very excited about talking about these documents. This is a culmination of about a 2 years effort with the Documents Committee to update the design build documents and do a new progressive design build document. So just a couple of housekeeping issues. Of course, this material is owned by AIA. And of course, they don't stand by anything we say. So while you ponder that dilemma, we can take a moment to introduce ourselves. I'll just give a little bit more background. Been with HOK about 18 years. We've done a lot of design build projects. We've done, very successful design build projects and challenging design build projects. So a lot of experience was brought from HOK into this effort. I've been with the Documents Committee about 10 years, and I served on the task group that updated the A141 and developed the new progressive design build version of the A141. Jennifer.
Hi, yeah, Jennifer Taylor, and I'm an architect with HDR. I'm located in Portland, Oregon, and I joined the committee last year, so I'm only in my second year on it, but I was able to sort of get in on the tail end of the design build documents before they went out. And I've been involved here in the Pacific Northwest with DBIA, been on the Oregon Steering Committee for a number of years. And have worked on a number of different types of collaborative delivery, which I'll talk about more later in the presentation. I've also been on the owner side. And so as we talk about some of this, I'll talk a little bit about, it from an owner's perspective as well.
And then, as Lane mentioned, Josh couldn't make it today, but he was one of our co-presenters in Boston last week. The learning objectives, again, if you guys, I will provide a PDF version of this presentation to Lane to distribute, and you can go through the learning objectives on your own. So the format that we have is we're going to first talk about what is progressive design build. We think any conversation about this topic really needs to start with kind of how is it defined and what are we thinking when we talk about progressive design build. Then we'll look at, how AIA views this process from both the design builder's perspective and the design professional's perspective. And then we'll talk about, how progressive design build can promote collaboration. So I will cover 1 and 2, and I'll cover as best I can Josh's portion, which was 3. And then Jennifer will wrap up with section 4. So what is progressive design build? The best way to start this conversation is with some industry definitions. There's a lot of consensus around sort of the elements of progressive design build if there's not complete consensus on what the process looks like. So DBIA looks at, progressive design build as a qualification-based selection process. And so it's really, the selection process is key here. And I just want to take a moment to kind of distinguish qualification-based selection process from value-based selection process. So qualification-based, we all know you submit quals, maybe some limited pricing, and based on your quals, you're selected, the contract is awarded. A value-based selection process, on the other hand, is really requires a GMP or a fixed price and schedule that is determinative in how the design build team is selected. So progressive design build, and you'll see this consistent through the definitions, qualification-based selection process is important. Once the team is selected, then the owner and the architect, design builder progress the design together towards a fixed price. This is how DBA looks at it. When we look at the FHA, also similarities, a two-phased delivery process, again, qualification-based, and the owner and design build team progress the design together to where you can arrive at a final scope, schedule, and budget for the project. Best for complex construction projects. And then the guiding principles we put together in developing the documents are very similar. Again, really emphasizing that this is a qualification-based selection process. It is also a two-phase delivery process. We have design phase and construction phase. And during design, the owner, architect, and design builder evaluate the owner's criteria. That's really what we call the validation phase. And then they progress the design together to an agreed level of design progression so that a reliable GMP and schedule can be set. And while we believe while our documents are really structured for complex design and construction projects, progressive design build really could be used on any size of project. So we want to take a moment to distinguish a traditional design build workflow from a progressive design build workflow. And so we have a couple of charts to do that. With the traditional design build workflow, the owner will develop some criteria. They will issue, a request for qualifications. Based on the qualifications, you'll get a short list team of, or short list number of design build teams who will then receive a proposal and be able to submit a proposal for the project. During the proposal phase, the design build team will really need to develop the design to a point where a fixed price and schedule can be set for both design and construction. That proposal phase is a very limited time period. There is literally no owner involvement in that process. You're really looking at maybe a very brief validation process, very limited pricing opportunities, and a development of design, which is about 20 to 30% of the design effort, something really kind of short of SD. The result of that effort is a fixed price for both design and construction. And therefore, that price is what is used to select the design build team. So there's no off-ramp. Once the proposal is accepted, that design build team is contracted to deliver the project for that fixed price and schedule. And so you can see there's a lot of design that occurs after that fixed price is set. And this is the biggest risk. When we really talked with design builders and designers about the biggest risk in design build, it is this pricing of a project on limited information and the contingency risk for owner changes or for further development of the design, material escalation. It's that contingency risk is the biggest risk in a value-based selection process. So that's traditional design build workflow. You can see the progressive design build workflow. The objective is really to move that fixed price position as far to the right as possible. And the big distinction here is an iterative design process that occurs before that fixed price is scheduled, or that fixed price and schedule are set. So it will start off, again, qualification-based selection process. There will be limited pricing. That pricing would probably most likely include at least the design builder and architect's fees through validation. Oftentimes, the pricing might include the entire design phase. So you might see some pricing for the pre-con services and for the design effort that'll occur before the fixed price is set. So once the design build team is then selected and awarded the contract, and then after the contract is executed, there will be a validation phase and an iterative design process with the owner. So you'll have an opportunity to hear from the owner and their stakeholders on changes, an opportunity to incorporate, authority having jurisdiction comments, more opportunities for pricing the project at each phase. And so you really get to a point where the pricing is more reliable. Once a GMP is proposed, but it could serve as an off-ramp if the owner and design builder cannot come to agreement on the price, the project may not go forward. But oftentimes the momentum is that they do reach agreement, and then that GMP then covers whatever remaining design services there are, plus construction, the remaining of construction. And you can see, because of the limited design effort after the fixed price is set, the contingency risk is reduced. So I like this slide. It just does a quick kind of reference, comparing different delivery processes, and kind of shows how we're progressive design build kind of fits in those processes. So we're all familiar with design bid build, owner contracts with the architect to fully develop the design information, at which point it's priced, and then the owner through a separate, or the contractor through a separate contract with the owner, delivers the project. The bidding process is much further to the right because it is based on more developed design information. As we talked about with traditional design build, the bidding process is moved really far to the left. It's based on limited design information, and so you have the entirety of design and construction are all subject to that fixed price, and so the design contingency risk is much greater. CM at risk, we all are familiar with that. The intent there was really to kind of bring the contractor in early, although there are still two contracts, one for design and one for construction. The idea with CM at risk is to bring the contractor in to provide constructability review, cost estimating, to become familiar with the design, so that when the GMP is actually proposed, it's based on more detailed design information and a better understanding of the project. And what I really want to talk about here is that we really think progressive design build is very similar to construction manager at risk. Although it's delivered through one contract with the owner, the processes are very similar, and the way that we structured our documents are very similar, so that there's pre-construction services by the design builder. Again, that constructability review, cost estimating through the design services. Then you have the fixed price set and a very limited amount of design and contingency risk after the GMP is set. So our drafting approach with the new A141 PDB really recognizes that design builders are construction managers on one project and they're design builders on another. So we didn't want to create a document that had a lot of brand new language. So we borrowed heavily from the A133 owner construction manager agreement and the B133 owner architect agreement. And that really is consistent with our idea that progressive design build is really a vertical sort of CM at risk CM approach. In developing the document, we really limited adding new language. We did add a validation phase, which was new, but for the most part, the language in the 141 is very similar to what you would see in the A133 or B133. We do have a limitation of liability and some other changes to liability for design services versus the warranty for construction, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So looking at the A141, oh yeah.
Donovan, well, I was just going to say, while you talk about this section, it'd be great for the participants if, I think the only way we can communicate is through the question and answer, but if you could just put in the questions, what part of, are you an architect, a legal representative, what, kind of where do you fit in this? And just so we know kind of like who we're talking to, that would be really helpful. And then if you have any experience working on progressive design build or design build projects in the past. So if you could just type that into the questions while Donovan's talking, that would be great. Thank you.
And I'm not seeing the question, so you'll have to let me know what the response is.
There's a Q&A button at the bottom, so if you click on that, but
oh, okay. We'll find it. But anyway, so okay, so the A141, just to kind of recap, generally, again, qualification-based selection process. We want to make sure that that is really important. Limited pricing would be considered for the design phase, but really it's qualification-based. It anticipates that there's robust owner's criteria and there's prompts that we'll go through and we'll talk about what we're looking for as far as the owner's criteria. Also, it's a two-phase delivery process where you have design phase where the owner design build team validate the owner's criteria and then go through this robust iterative design process. And then the construction phase really follows the traditional A141 approach. And CM, it's just a very traditional sort of construction delivery process. So just looking at the different sections, Article 1, again, prompting for that owner's criteria. We want to know what the program is, what the owner's design requirements are, the physical characteristics of the site, so the owner has responsibility for providing land survey, geotechnical engineering, civil engineering. And so we also have prompts to know what the owner's budget is for the work, and then what key milestones the owner is looking for delivery of the project, both for the design phase milestones and for completion of the project. So compensation is covered under Article 2. Compensation is somewhat complex in this document, and it's important to really understand how that works. It's divided into really two parts. There's compensation for work performed prior to execution of the design build amendment, and then compensation for work performed after. As we mentioned before, the compensation for work performed prior to execution of the design build amendment is that compensation for design phase, for those design phases. And that's a stipulated sum plus reimbursable expenses. It will cover all of the design builder's pre-con services, and then it covers validation, schematic design, design development, and construction documents. It does not cover construction administration, because those services are performed after execution of the design build amendment. So once the GMP is agreed to and the design build amendment is executed, that GMP really covers all of the work, the remaining design services, plus construction of the work. There is also an opportunity for liquidated damages where the parties can agree to a monetary amount, a triggering event, and also a cap on those LDs. And I just want to point out that this is one of 3 risk limitation provisions that this document has for design builders. So Article 3, again, the general requirements of the work, covers things like, the design builder's progress reports, updating the schedule. But more importantly, this is a key difference that we've made both in the traditional design build document and in the progressive design build document. As you might recall, in prior versions of AIA's design build documents, the design builder was required to provide a warranty that covered both design and construction of the work. And so now what we've done is we've separated that out to where the design services are covered by a standard of care, which is just an ordinary standard of care that we're very familiar with. And then the construction work is actually governed by the warranty, and effectively the design builders warrants that the work will be, good, new quality, and free from defects. So this aligns AIA with other design build documents that are out there, other standard forms, and it's a key difference, as I mentioned, in both traditional and progressive. So Article 4 is the design phase services. This covers, of course, the pre-con services provided by the design builder. That's constructability review, cost estimating, recommendation on alternative, material systems. There's also provisions for early release of the work and early procurement of materials. And then validation, and this is really key, and this is a important aspect of our document and unique to the AIA documents, in that it's really important for the parties to be on the same page as to what is being built. So during the validation phase, the owner, architect, and design builder look at the owner's criteria, they look at the local conditions. There's a preliminary design effort just to make sure that, the design and program can fit within the site. There's an estimation of the guaranteed maximum price that sets sort of the target price for going forward. You look at the applicable laws, and everything is then reduced into a written report, and that written report is reviewed and approved by the owner. That written report, once approved by the owner, serves as the basis of design for all of the subsequent design phase services.
Hey, Donovan, so there's a question that might be good to answer before we get too much further on. So the question is, does the reference limited pricing in the qualifications-based selection include a fee percent and possibly a budgetary range for GRs and GCs as part of a simplistic high-level cost structure review?
There is a fee ability to include the contractor's fee, and it doesn't, while the standard form doesn't specifically allow for the GCs and GRs, that could be amended, but there definitely is an opportunity to include the contractor's fee. And that's similar to the CM at risk approach. Okay, so once validation has occurred, we have the design builder's report and it's been approved, then we move into very standard design phase and very iterative design process that we're all familiar with. This comes directly out of the B133, schematic design, design development, construction documents. We also have an opportunity for other design phase services. Those are what are called supplemental in the BDocs currently. So if there's a need for programming or interior design or security, things that aren't ordinarily included in the architect scope, those could also be added. And then there's an opportunity for additional services. So it's important to recognize, because this iterative design process occurs before the GMP is set, there will be changes, and there might be changes to the owner's criteria. The owner might make changes that affect the quality, complexity of the project, and so there needs to be an opportunity for the design builder to seek additional services for those changes, and so we've built that into the A141 as well. So once the design has progressed to a point where the parties are comfortable setting the GMP, then the design builder's proposal is submitted. Now, our documents contemplate that would occur after construction documents are complete. Now, that's the same in the A133 CM at risk documents. However, we all know that line gets moved. It doesn't always, it usually occurs much earlier than conclusion of construction documents. But we did put a break on that to make sure that it does not occur any earlier than completion of design development. And the thought process there is that design development is when once at the conclusion of design development, all of the major design decisions should be made, and it should really be just documentation during the CD phase of services. So it's important that we're not pricing the project at something earlier than completion of design development. And so then that guaranteed maximum price would include the completion of design plus any design contingency that's needed to further refine the design, and it would include all of the costs for constructing the work. Once the design build proposal is agreed to by the owner, it's incorporated into the contract through the design build amendment. And then Article 6 is the construction phase. And as I said, that just really follows the traditional design or construction process set out in the A141. Got a couple more just unique things we did add as far as claims and disputes are concerned. There's an opportunity for the parties to opt in to have a meet and confer prior to mediation or arbitration or litigation. We also have an option for a project neutral. This is very similar to the interim decision-making, the IDM process that is in the A133. However, it didn't make sense to have the architect automatically identified as the IDM, so we've adapted this to allow the parties to pick perhaps a third party that could make decisions on an interim basis. And then, of course, we have mediation as a condition to litigation or arbitration. And then finally, just talking about the kind of risk mitigation and protections that are in this document. We mentioned first that there's a cap on liquidated damages. That's one limitation aspect of this document. We also have a traditional waiver of consequential damages, and then we have a opt-in design builder's limitation of liability. And that limitation of liability is structured in two ways. So damages that are covered by insurance, the liability is limited to the stated limits of insurance of the applicable policy. So it's not all of the design builder's insurance, it's whatever is required in the contract. And then there's a fill-in stipulated sum for any other damages that wouldn't be covered by insurance. Standard exclusions to that limitation for fraud, willful misconduct, abandonment of the project, etc. Okay, so any questions or anything? No?
No, I don't see any new questions for you that are specific to where we're at. So
Okay.
keep going.
Okay. So I'll go through as best I can Josh's sort of summary of the design build, the design professional's perspective under our B141 PDB. So really, I think what's really important is for for design professionals, for architects to look at progressive design build as an improvement over traditional design build. And it really puts design back into design build. It has that iterative design process that we're very familiar with. It has a deeper interaction between the owner and the architect than you would have on a traditional design build project. So really kind of the big takeaway, I think, for architects is that it's a much more design focused process and would lead to better design outcomes. It's important to really kind of understand how to quantify your services. So while the A141 PDB, or I'm sorry, the B141, the design agreement does have standard services included for validation, SD, DD, and CD. What occurs after the design build amendment is executed is really there's a menu of options that can be selected. So every project is different. The design builder may have the architect review RFIs or may not, may have them review applications of payment or may not. So it's important to go through when you're preparing this document and have a conversation with the design builder about what services really are included. You don't want to go through and just check every box. You really want to be very careful about selecting only those services that are applicable to your scope. One of the things that is unique and is new in this document is the ability to have a very early conversation with the design builder and ultimately with the owner about what elements of the project will be delegated design. So one of the things that we heard from design builders, and I've heard this in my practice, is that they're not opposed to delegated design, they just don't want to be surprised by it. And so to the extent that we can identify early on the typical things that will be delegated, curtain wall, steel connections, there are stairs, exit stairs, there are things that are typically delegated, and to the extent that we can identify those, that's helpful. There's a corresponding provision in the A141 that allows the design builder to have a similar conversation with the owner about this so that the owner understands the benefit they're getting through delegated design services. Yeah, it's just important to understand the way that communications occur with the owner. All communications with the owner occur through the design builder. However, there is an option here for situations that affect the health, safety, and welfare. The architect will promptly notify the design builder and has a way of dealing with those issues. So while we're mindful of the way that communications must flow and be managed, there are provisions that allow for protection of our professional responsibilities. And then you'll see the other important thing as you go through the document is there's a number of fill-in points throughout the document that limit or control the number of meetings, for example, that the architect must attend. So it's important to go through the document and make sure that they're identified, and the number of site reviews and things like that. So I will turn this over to Jennifer for how PDB promotes collaboration.
Great. Thank you, Donovan. So thank you all for just putting in the chat, kind of what your background is. It really helps. It's, we're used to presenting live to people and being able to ask questions and have it be a little more interactive. So it's great to see that most of you are architects. A lot of you are specifiers, which not surprising given that's a CSI, and we have at least one owner. So it's good, kind of just background information. It doesn't seem like anyone has worked with progressive design build yet. So everyone's new to progressive design build. So that's kind of a good perspective. Donovan, can you go to the next slide? I just realized I can't control that.
Yep, I can. Here we go.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
So I think, we started with saying, what's the value proposition of progressive design build? And it's really about collaboration. And I think, a lot of you have worked on CMAR projects or other projects where the builders brought in during the design phases, and there's been a real development of more collaborative delivery methods, over the last, say, 20 years or so. And it's like, what is the value proposition of collaboration? I think the reason that these have been developed is looking for a way to break down the silos that have been really traditional with design bid build, of sort of the thought for so long was to keep everybody in their silo, and that was the best way to control cost and to control the contractors. I think now people are understanding that the more you can bring people together and have them work together, one, you're benefiting from all that knowledge about how to actually build the project from the builder and sometimes the trades brought on early. You're getting that input early, and that allows for fewer errors and omissions in the field later. And ideally, we've talked about optimizing the whole. Like, it's ideally everyone's got ownership and buy-in to making the project successful. And for owners, that means that you get a project that hopefully, meets your brief, meets the budget, is high quality construction because people are taking pride in what they're doing. That there's a lot of knock-on effects to that. These delivery methods have been developed over the last few years in a variety of delivery methods. Integrated project delivery is one where there's a tri-party agreement. CMAR, which most people are familiar with bringing the builder on during the design phase. Progressive design build is another one of these delivery methods that's been developed. And I think, like Donovan was showing earlier, and maybe we can go to the next slide, with the kind of work streams for the different delivery methods. What's really key to progressive design build is the validation phase. And the term validation phase has been developed with IPD, integrated project delivery, and now is being applied to progressive design build as the phase where everybody gets the opportunity to make sure that the scope is defined, that you've defined the risks to the project that are really specific to the project, and how you plan to mitigate them. And you've got an opportunity then to really think through schedule in a lot of detail. Are you going to have multiple packages with overlapping? Is it more heel to toe? What's going to be the best way to deliver this specific project, so that by the time you get to the GMP at the end of the validation phase on these projects, everybody has a very good idea of what their risks are, what the cost should be. There's much more cost certainty and schedule certainty. The benefits for the architects is that you're not trying to put guess and put a lump sum fee together at the very beginning of a project when you don't really know what you're getting into. on progressive design build, you're not putting, there's an initial fee for the validation phase, but you don't put together your remaining fee until that becomes part of the GMP. So that's a huge benefit for architects. The design builder is able to, unlike traditional design build, you know, they have this opportunity to really understand the project before having to put a total price together. And then the owner is just much more, is able to participate a lot more than in a traditional design build where, you know, when I put my owner's hat on, trying to put together a brief that is detailed enough or covers all the bases for a traditional design build, and knowing that you're really going to get what you needed without a whole lot of back and forth is, you know, if you don't have having either hired people to help you prepare that or have the skills in-house to do that, that's a really tall bar. In this case, you're able to hire your experts who are going to be with you through the whole process to develop that together. And it's a much more, like Donovan was saying, iterative process. But it's and has both the owner, the builder, and the architect working together much more hand in hand than in traditional design build. You want to go to the next one, I think? So we talked a little bit about how working collaboratively. Oh, actually, let me just stop for 1 second. So I forgot to mention on these few slides, there are some pictures on the side. I'm from Portland, here in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of progressive design build going on. It's the culture really took off here. And so, you know, it's a little bit of a hotbed for progressive design build in the country. So this is highlighting a few projects that are happening in the Oregon and Washington area with different builders and architects. And just to kind of show, you know, good design is definitely a potential outcome, a desired outcome of being able to do progressive design build. So, excuse me, it can lead to collaboration in general, and then progressive design build can lead to, you know, better project outcomes. Like we said, the validation phase allows everyone to really make sure that the project is delivering what the owner has requested and needs for the budget that they have. And that all those decisions are made up front. Depending on the, you know, skills of the builder and the trades brought on, there's different ways to do sort of onboard pricing and early design phase pricing, and really have that carry through so that you've got a lot more cost certainty early on. And I could do a completely separate presentation just about that. That's been really, over my 25 years of working on this type of stuff, been an interesting area of trying to really get cost certainty earlier in a project that is then reliable over the life of the project. And then again, schedule. You've got a lot more time to really determine what's the best way to package and deliver this project, given your area, your code reviewers and permitting folks and seasons and everything else, to really do a deep dive and figure that out in more detail early on. And then I think last slide. So again, risk. This delivery method really does help kind of distribute risk more equitably. You know, traditional design build really came up as a way for owners to just transfer as much risk as possible to the design builder. I think what's nice about progressive design build is the there's a little bit more shared risk and reward, I think is probably the best way to put it. Like we said before, the architect has the opportunity to really understand the scope and the schedule before having to put together their final fee. So they're less likely to end up, with a fee that doesn't cover the amount of work that's required. The builder, by the time they put their GMP together, really understands what it's going to take to put this project together. And there is an off-ramp. If they get to that point and the owner's like, this just isn't working for me, I'm not getting what I wanted after all this, or the builder feels that they can't deliver for what is, the final budget is or something. There is a point where there is an off-ramp, which there is not in traditional design build. And also just not just thinking it from your own firm's risk standpoint, but from a project standpoint, with everyone kind of being a stakeholder in the success of this project, it gives the team a chance to really daylight any risks that might come up that are specific to this project and have a plan for how to mitigate them or what they might cost if they happen, so that that there aren't surprises when you get further into construction, or there are fewer surprises, and you've thought in ahead of time how to handle them. So that's just kind of a bit of an overview of some of the benefits of collaboration and progressive design build. We'd love to hear what other questions you have, and or comments or stories about things you've worked on. It would be great to take some time now to open it up to all of you.
You see the one from Stacy
Yeah, help minimize the
about
race to
does
lowest price.
PDB help minimize the race to lowest price?
Yes. I believe that it does very, very much so. Because traditional design build, and it's, I've worked on projects for the Army Corps of Engineers and things where their form of design build is it's still a value-based selection, but they're really looking at cost, right? They're trying to get what's in those specifications for the lowest cost. Similarly, I've worked on some traditional design build projects for the Canadian healthcare authority, and they have a very strict formula of how they do it, and you've got to check every box and come in with the price that is closest to the brief. I think what progressive design build allows is you've selected a team that has the qualifications that you're looking for. There can be some price in that in terms of like looking at, I think the question from Rod earlier, you could add to your qualifications, what are the GC's overhead, and some of their costs, you get a sense, you could compare between them a bit, but it really allows for looking at, say, multiple options for how to solve certain problems and pricing different options so that you can get to the program you're trying to build with options that allow you to afford that. I think there's a lot more opportunity to do that here.
Yeah, I would just add to that. Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole objective with progressive design build, is to avoid that, race to the bottom on, design and construction costs. It's really to get reliable pricing that's based on developed design information, so that there's not surprises to the owner. The design builder's not in a bind because they, can't get changes from the owner, and they, then are looking to the architect to sort of recover lost costs. So, it's absolutely designed to avoid specifically that. Yeah.
I was going to add, there's a lot of lean tools and things that have been developed that are really applicable to any collaborative delivery method, and things like target value delivery, choosing by advantages, and other ways where you can start to, rather than just looking at something based on cost, like this is the lowest cost option, choosing by advantages, for instance, gives you the opportunity to really look at different options based on what they provide, and score them, and that will give you some answers before you even look at the cost. So there's a lot of different tools and methodologies that can be implemented depending on your project and what's appropriate to really make more conscious decisions, I think, about how to get the project you want for the amount of money you have.
I think there's a question about the differences between IPD and progressive design build, and I'll just kind of talk to that. So,
Sure.
kind of the fundamentals of IPD are, one, that there's joint management of the joint decision making through the project management team. You don't have that joint decision making process here. We did incorporate a validation process, but ultimately, the owner is making decisions about the project. So that ability to sit at a table and have the owner, architect, and contractor jointly manage the project, that's not part of progressive design build. The other distinction is there are not built-in risk reward mechanisms. So there's not, the incentive pool,
Right, shared incentive pool,
shared loss and shared rewards. So so there are some key differences. It's not identical. And there's one, the contracting structure is completely different. You're not all in one contract together. The owner contracts with the design builder, and the design builder contracts with everyone else. So that's one of
the IPD project I'm working on right now, there are 14 signatories to the contract, which I don't really recommend, but
that sounds like a nightmare.
It's tough. It makes the shared risk reward negotiations really challenging. But Angie, I'm going to type an answer to you, but I'd be happy if you want to reach out at any time to talk more about design build or progressive design build, kind of from an owner's perspective. There's probably other people I can put you in touch with too, who you could talk to on the owner side.
If I could help answer Angie's question.
Yeah.
Her question is looking forward to talking with our leadership team and seeing if it can be used under state contracting requirements. Speaking as the person who helped develop the design build contract for the state of Ohio, which is where Angie is. And this is very similar to how we structured that agreement. The only difference, well, there are many differences, but it is still the design phases that we have in the state contract. The difference is you don't have a criteria architect, engineer at the beginning developing the criteria for the solicitation process. And you're spending that upfront time with the design team and the design builder developing the project after you sign the initial contract with them. So I think there are some similarities, in Angie, Craig, and our team at OFCC had talked about progressive design build as a possible method, or and there is some language in the budget bill that might help with that. So look forward to talking with you a little more about that. What about the beauty contest? So a lot of times in traditional design build delivery, you include a design proposal with your proposal to win the project. Can you describe how that's different here?
Yeah, you can, and I'm kind of like thinking about some real world experiences we had with traditional design build and submitting alternatives. So, um, we delivered a major airport project that was on a value-based selection process. And it was, we received a sort of a basis of design from a criteria architect that had a number of challenges, both in how you could lay out airport operations because of kind of the flood zoning requirements, and then also there were challenges with respect to how you would sequence the work. And so we did propose in that process an alternative design, which was ultimately selected and ultimately implemented. I think that's a lot more challenging in a traditional design build value-based selection process than it would be in progressive. In progressive, you could test different alternatives in that iterative design process, and even validation could be used as an opportunity to look at alternatives and arrive at something that may deviate from what the owner's initial criteria was, and then move forward. So I think it's a more sane way of dealing with those the design alternatives, which are a big part, and that's where the creativity, for designers really comes in design build, is being able to offer those alternatives. So,
Great. Any
We
other?
are at 1 o'clock. We started a little late, but I'm starting to see a few people drop off. I want to thank you both for presenting today, and it was very good information. A lot of the comments in the question box are, thank you for a great presentation.
we're good.
And I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you next month in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wanted to plug our October meeting coming up. We're going to have James Timberlake with Kieran Timberlake talk about the U.S. Embassy project in London. So that should be a very good presentation. We're trying to make it work out that we do a collaboration between CSC's Bridge chapter, which is their virtual chapter, and our CSINext. So we have kind of an international joint meeting. So we're trying to do that. And once again, thank you all for attending, and we will send a survey link in the email soon, and you can plug in your information to get credit. And thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time. We will be on hiatus until September. Enjoy your summer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Lane.
Thanks, Lane.
for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you soon.
Take care.